Welcome back. Welcome back. The time is now 9:29, 9:30, and the City Council is reconvened in open session. Let the record reflect we're joined by all council members. We have a quorum present. And for members of the public, the City Council will be conducting the rest of its meeting in this chamber. The Park and Recreation Board is meeting in room 333, adjacent to the mayor's office. And now the council will take up the consideration of the first item on its agenda, which is the proposed 2015 property tax levies payable in 2016. To do that, I will recognize Councilmember Quincy to present the report of the Ways and Means Budget Subcommittee. Councilmember Quincy.
Thank you, Madam President. On behalf of the Budget Subcommittee, I'd move adoption of a resolution approving 2015 property tax levies to be paid in 2016.
Councilmember Quincy has moved the levy recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I am going to have to, my battery is low in my computer. So I need to get into speaker management. It's our tech guy here. Okay. 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 All right. Sorry for the delay. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the delay. Councilmember Quincy has moved the adoption of the resolution approving the 2015 property tax levy. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Kano.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Glidden.
Aye.
Yang.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Quincy.
Aye.
Warsami.
Aye.
Goodman.
Aye.
Fry.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That motion prevails, and the resolution establishing the city's 2015 property tax levies has been adopted, payable in 2016. The second agenda item is the proposed 2016 general appropriation resolution for operating departments under the City Council. Councilmember Quincy, will you please present that report?
Thank you, Madam President. I move adoption of the resolution establishing operating budgets for departments under the City Council and fixing the maximum amounts to be expended by city departments in fiscal year 2016.
Councilmember Quincy has moved adoption of the 2016 general appropriation resolution establishing operating budgets for those departments under City Council control. Is there any discussion on the motion? So we're using speaker management. Any discussion on the motion? Any amendments? Any amendments? Mike?
Yep.
Okay, Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to move to amend the 2016 general appropriation resolution by decreasing on a one-time basis the public works budget by $105,000 from the LED lighting initiative and increasing the police budget by $105,000 and reallocating $200,000 from the timing of hiring new positions cost savings to be used for CIT and procedural justice training with the police departments in addition to the department's existing training budget.
Is there a second? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in a, I'm sorry. Are we all right?
Gordon jumped in.
Councilmember Gordon? Am I not seeing this? Am I?
I'm having some problems.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
No,
Pardon me?
I,
Exit out of our speaker management, or
And start over again?
no, I was. I'll speak. I did click out because I was ready to remove my name when it looked like there was going to be unanimous passage. I didn't think we had to discuss it very well. I'll just note that, typically I might not support amendments coming in like this, and I also have some concerns about the LED lighting, but especially in light of the presentation this morning and concerns that we have about the police department, I think accelerating the procedural justice training with the department is an appropriate use of these funds, so I'll support this.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Councilmember Kano.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question. Is it appropriate to ask a question right now?
Sure.
There is, can you, Councilmember Blanc-Yang, can you explain the reallocation of $200,000 from timing of hiring new positions, cost savings? What positions, what departments, how is this calculated?
Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Christensen can answer that question, actually.
Ms. Christensen?
Council President Johnson, Councilmember Kano, and Councilmember Yang, and other members of the council, the $200,000 that is represented in the motion before you regarding savings garnered through delayed hiring. There are a number of new positions recommended in the budget recommendation in the police department that will not be filled as of January 1st. And in recognition of there being a portion of the position cost savings during that time in which the positions are vacant, the motion would redirect those savings towards implementing this accelerated training program.
Thank you for that not so clear answer, I feel. I'm going to vote against this motion. I was never consulted on this. I have a lot of questions about what kind of training this is. What is the curriculum? Who are the trainers? I know this is part of our, it says here that it's part of our procedural justice training with the police department in relationship to the DOJ initiative, perhaps. But this elicits more questions that it gives answers to. And I feel like if Councilmember Blanc-Yang was really serious about putting this forward, there would have been more conversations amongst the council members about what this is actually meant to be doing. And furthermore, I just have questions in general about how much more funding down the line are we going to be asked to put forward around these training initiatives? When do we start? When do we end? What are the goals? What are the metrics? It's not specific enough for me.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Frye?
Thank you, Madam President. The procedural justice as well as the implicit bias training that we discussed this morning, I think is exceedingly important. It was a recommendation that went from the DOJ to us, I believe. And this is a recommendation that would help us move forward on a lot of these progressive ideals and values that we've been espousing. I mean, we went through a 30 or 40-minute presentation perhaps this morning, and I'm supportive of it. And I agree with Councilmember Gordon entirely, who taking money away from LED lighting initiative is not something that I would normally support. But in the face of some really serious issues that we're dealing with nationwide and specifically in Minneapolis, this makes sense. This does, and I'm for it. Yeah.
Councilmember Bender?
Thank you, Madam President. I actually really appreciated the presentation this morning and the information there. I'm very supportive of this particular amendment. I did want to voice some concern about the number of what seem to be pretty significant amendments that are coming tonight instead of during the budget markup that happened last Friday. This is only my second budget cycle, but it seems unusual to me. As a relatively new council member, but I imagine this will continue throughout my career, I actually like to engage my constituents quite a lot in the budget. My constituents in the 10th Ward pay a significant amount of taxes, but everyone across the city, I think, deserves to know as much as they can what's in our $1 billion budget. And the budget, someone spoke, I think, very eloquently about the fact that our budget is a moral document and it really is the expression of our city's values. And so for my constituents to not get the chance to know what the council was going to propose, for me not to get the chance to ask staff those questions, to engage with my colleagues, I think it's just a disservice to the whole process of our budget. And so again, I'll be supporting this amendment, but I do have concerns about that process, and I just hope that in future budgets we're able to do more what I think is the typical process of bringing some of these more significant motions through the regular budget markup process. I also want to request that we take a roll call vote on this and all of the amendments.
And all of the amendments, did you say? Okay. All right. Any further discussion on Councilmember Yang's amendment? And we've been asked for a roll call vote on all the amendments. Seeing no further discussion, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Gordon.
Aye.
Kano.
Nay.
Wright.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Glidden.
Aye.
Yang.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Quincy.
Aye.
Warsami.
Aye.
Goodman.
Aye.
Fry.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye.
There are 12 ayes and 1 nay.
That amendment is adopted. I'm going to bring forward one amendment that's in front of you, and it's actually from myself and Councilmember Yang. We move to amend the general appropriation resolution by replacing $129,000 in general fund funding for eligible community planning and economic development housing program costs with the additional levy resource from the special tax levy, Chapter 595, and increasing the department's employment and training budget by $129,000 for Summit Academy OIC's contextualized GED program. Summit Academy OIC will be required to report back to the Community Development Regulatory Services Committee on October 1st, 2016 to provide an update on the number of participants enrolled and the number of participants who have successfully completed the program. Summit Academy is a job training center in North Minneapolis that has a number of programs, and what they have discovered is many of the people that apply to Summit Academy do not have their GED. The GED has been changed. It now has to be taken online, and it also is, I would say, a significantly more difficult test than it was a few years ago. So Summit Academy has plans to, I guess you would call it dual track, people who need a GED but also have enrolled in either their healthcare track, job training, or their construction job training programs. And so they will take those classes while they are also getting preparing and then taking the GED. So I'd encourage my colleagues to support this program. And we will get a report back by October 1st so that we understand the success or lack thereof, but we hope they have great success with the program. Councilmember Quincy on the motion.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to add my support to this motion. I think it's incredibly important when we have the opportunity to offer additional resources to what we know to be working programs. And certainly Summit Academy OIC is doing a tremendous job in enhancing employment opportunities through increasing people's access to GED programs. So I think it's a terrific use of resources. The source of the funds is a little known and barely used special tax levy, so it doesn't do any harm to the overall structural balanced budget that has been presented. So I think it's an excellent use of these resources, and I look forward to a report in October outlining how those additional resources have impacted the communities.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I did want to hear from Ms. Christensen a little bit more on the sources of funding this program. This is the first time I've seen this motion. I want to make sure I'm understanding if there's a reference to housing program costs. And maybe you can explain this special tax levy a little bit more to us, please.
Council President Johnson, Councilmember Glidden, and other members of the City Council, the Chapter 595 levy is also known as the HRA levy. It is a special levy that is certified to the county. It's also eligible for its own allocation of fiscal disparities. During the Board of Estimate and Taxation setting of the city's maximum levy, it was identified that by certifying $129,000 of city levy associated with the HRA levy would allow the city to be the recipient of approximately $125,000 in fiscal disparity distribution, meaning, bottom line, that about $4,000 increase in the overall impact to the average or to the taxpayers of the city of Minneapolis. The 595 HRA levy can only be used for economic development related activities. The motion by Council President Glidden is to reduce the utilization of general fund resources in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department for housing programs by $129,000 and replace that funding with the Chapter 595 levy, and then to utilize the newly freed up $129,000 of general fund levy to provide for funding for the Summit OIC.
So I have a follow-up question.
Go
Two
ahead,
follow-up
Councilman
questions. One is, I'd like to know when's the last time the HRA levy was utilized. The second question is, what housing programs were reduced or what funding? I don't understand that piece of what was reduced. So what might we see? And maybe this is a program income piece, or I don't know. You need to explain that a little bit more, please.
Council President Johnson, Councilmember Glidden, there actually isn't a decrease in funding. It's merely a replacement of the source of funding. So by linking the appropriate eligible expenditures in the CPED department to the HRA levy, it allows for an additional $129,000 of general fund to be freed up.
And the last time the HRA levy was utilized?
We adopted an HRA levy in 2015 of $1 million.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Goodman?
Thank you, Madam President. So we discussed this in the CPED budget markup. The interest at that time was actually taking the money from the Tech Hire Initiative, but Eric in the mayor's office spent a good amount of time educating a number of us about the Tech Hire Initiative, which is an initiative to help young people, especially young people of color, get into tech jobs, because as I think a lot of people in this room know, not like me, I'm not on Twitter or anything like that, but young people are really big into technology, and if we can help them get into a training program, tech jobs pay a lot. So we didn't think it was a good idea to take the money out of the Tech Hire Initiative, which is a job training program primarily focused on youth to get them into high-paying career ladder type jobs. But this GED issue is a big issue in our community, and people are having a hard time moving forward if they don't have a GED. So I think that's a big reason why we tried to figure out a way to not take something from someone else's important program, but add this. I'll note we spend about in excess of $3.5 million annually on job training activities in Minneapolis. These range from all sorts of different providers who work with people in our community to get them into career laddering jobs. Some of them are with Dunwoody, for example. One we're going to discuss tonight is a building trades partnership. So we spend a fair amount of money on that. We also spend a fair amount of money on youth employment and youth training in the Summer Jobs Program. So this is adding to our about $5 million we spend on job training. We take that fairly seriously, and we actually grade all of the organizations that participate in job training programs, and all of that information is online. So anyone can take a look at who we give money to do job training, how much we give them per participant, what job they get, whether or not they're successful, and how long they're in that job. So there's all sorts of statistics kept, quite frankly, including race. So I would urge folks to take a look at that as we add a very small amount of money to the very large number of things we're doing in the area of job development and training.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Borton.
Yes.
Kano.
Yes.
Wright. Bender. Glidden.
Aye.
Yang.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Quincy.
Aye.
Warsami.
Aye.
Goodman.
Aye.
Fry.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye.
There are 13 ayes.
That amendment passes. Back to the main motion, Councilmember Warsami.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I bring forward a motion in the 2016 General Appropriation Resolution by myself and Councilmember Yang to move and to amend the 2016 General Appropriation Resolution by reducing $50,000 in General Fund one-time enhancements, funding for green zones in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department, and relocating $50,000 to the Fire Department. $42,000 will be used for the purpose of partnering with organizations to provide youth technical training and outreach, and for identifying and securing locations that will allow Hennepin County Technical College, Roosevelt High School's multi-craft core curriculum, and Public Works Fleet Division Mechanic Trainee Program to receive educational equipment that has been leveraged through the Department of Employment and Economic Development grant. The remaining $8,000 will be allocated to the Midtown Safety Center, and I would like to speak on this.
Councilmember Warsame.
Can I speak on it?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Now, this is basically taking $50,000 from the green zones in the community planning and economic development and moving this money to be used to provide youth technical training programs for students from Roosevelt High School. Many of them will be from Ward 6. Many of them will be students of color. And this program will allow them to do a mechanic trainee program with the unions in order for them to get training to get livable wage jobs in the future. I think this is very important, especially as with the public testimonies today, everybody was talking about youth development training programs and making sure that our youth have the opportunities to get livable wages. The other amount, the $8,000 remainder, will go to the Midtown Safety Center, which basically serves a number of neighborhoods in Ward 6 and Ward 9, including Ventura Village and Phillips West neighborhood, that's in my ward, and the remainder in Ward 9 with Alondra Cano. And I think this is very important, and I would like my colleagues to support this motion.
Motion's been made. Councilmember Cano.
Thank you, Madam President. So first of all, this amendment was never brought forward to me. Again, the authors of this initiative, Councilmember Yang and Warsame, did not speak to me about this issue. I've had no residents talk to me about getting funding for the Midtown Safety Center, so this is kind of a surprise. I will say that I've been working on the Green Zones initiative with my colleagues for the past 2 years, and it was a campaign issue for me, for the Phillips communities specifically, which I know Councilmember Warsame also represents. And so the notion of the Green Zones pilot project money in the Community Planning and Economic Development Department is to help us transition our businesses into the green economy. And we've had the climate action plan that has codified green zones as an initiative we need to move forward. We have a resolution that passed the Health, Environment and Community Engagement Committee a few weeks ago, having the city call out a work group to really put this concept together. So I just want to stress that these $50,000 that the mayor put into her budget around these issues are connected to environmental justice, to empowering immigrant families, low-income families, families of color to regain their health, and to organize and work together to address issues of environmental racism in their neighborhoods. And it would impact and actually help the council members' wards who are actually authoring this particular initiative. So I'm just looking forward to the day that the misogyny in this council can end, and where we can where we can actually all stand behind a cohesive vision for one Minneapolis, for racial justice that is supported by people of color, immigrant people on this council.
Councilmember Andrew Johnson.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a question on this, or I guess I'll just put this out there. So in the mayor's proposed budget, there is $50,000 advocated for the Community Outreach Explorer program. My understanding, talking with the chief, is that is actually offering leadership development, encouraging youth in our public schools, high schools, to enter firefighting and emergency services as a career. It's actually, Roosevelt is in Ward 12, which I know this amendment actually specifically mentions, and that is one of the schools that specifically is getting that youth technical training and outreach as a result of that Community Explorer program. So it seems to me like that is already in the budget for $50,000. So I'm wondering if this is an additional $50,000, how this might differ from that, and it's just really a question. So
I will speak to both Councilmember Cano and Councilmember Johnson's points. This is actually in addition to that amount. So this is we're not replicating that amount. And again, if we're talking about equity in this city and we're talking about equity in this country, and one of the biggest things is unemployment and underemployment, and this is a specific program that's going to help inner city youth of color, to get necessary training programs in conjunction with the unions so they can do the jobs that their parents do not do today. So if that's misogyny and if that's somehow, hurting, people of color, I don't know what's going to help, because this is actually tackling one of the issues that we have been talking about over and over again, the lack of employment in our communities, the lack of employment with regards to our children. And I think we should support this. And 50,000 is not enough. We should have 500,000 for this. But this is a start. This is a start. And I will talk on the other issues that we wanted to talk about before, but let's support this motion as it stands.
Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Madam President. The Green Zones Initiative has not passed the City Council yet, but it is going to be on the first committee agenda for the Community Development Committee in January. Nothing in this resolution prevents CPED staff from working on that. In fact, they have already been working on that, as has the Sustainability Office. So there isn't an allocation of money required at this time. There hasn't even been anything passed through the council, and when it is, the committee needs to meet and determine kind of what their plan is. So nothing in this motion would prevent that from moving forward through the council, nor would you need a budget allocation to have any staff members working on the Green Zone Initiative should it pass. I will note with regard to this particular program, this is a partnership between MCTC, the Minneapolis Community and Technical College, as well as Hennepin County Technical College and Roosevelt High School. This is a welding-specific program. DEED has allocated a fairly large grant to the Technical College in order to provide equipment to train Minneapolis youth in welding and construction trades, but there isn't a location in the city where this equipment can be located. So this funding would provide for a partnership between MCTC, the community college, and Roosevelt to be able to locate this equipment at a location where Minneapolis public school students will be able to use it. It's one-time money, and so it's not an ask for an ongoing allocation, and it seems like an opportunity with regard to youth job training, especially as it pertains to Roosevelt.
Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Given the stage that the Green Zones work is at with, again, not passing, so the work group that I think will likely pass the council early next year hasn't even passed the council yet, nor has it formed. So it seems to me that a Green Zones budgetary item is probably more appropriate for next year. I know a little bit about this program, and what I know about it, I think it's a good program and a good investment. I'm curious about the $8,000 for the Midtown Safety Center, and I wondered if that request was coming from the MPD or why it didn't go through sort of the normal MPD budget process, or what that, it's a kind of a, I mean, it's a small amount of money, but on the other hand, it's a very specific amount of money. Is it for something specific?
Councilmember Warsame.
Again, I can answer to this. This safety center has existed before my time. And the former council member that represented Ward 6 actually funded this project. They ran out of money, and the Midtown Neighborhood Organization actually asked for this. Again, this is something that is valuable to the communities there. The neighborhood organizations, including 4 neighborhood organizations, have been asking for it, and it's $8,000. That was something that has been happening that I think we should support as well. So again, this is where we could find that money. Again, I support the Green Zone, but just like my colleague said, it's not necessary at this time, and we need these 2 projects, and I would like your support on it.
Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the support for the green zones. My opinion differs a little bit. I think this money could be used. It could be used to help provide some research and technical support. Green zone is something new to the city that we've never done, so I appreciated that the mayor put some money in the budget to support this work, because I think it's something that we have to move into carefully, and it could be significant or it could be nothing. I'm very hopeful that it's also going to pass the council the first cycle. I'm picking up, just based on the comments so far, that this money could potentially be reallocated. It's sounding like it's going to be, and I admit that these are other good things as well. So this is a difficult one. It's kind of a gray area. There's some good things over here. There's this thing that could be good, but we're not quite sure where it's going to go. I'm going to vote to keep reserve that money for green zones, but that doesn't mean that I also don't support these employment training efforts that we're doing and future funding. And I look forward to working with my colleagues, even if they don't support the green zone money this time, maybe coming back next year and seeing what we can do to make more out of that.
Councilmember Glidden.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well, I appreciate the motion. I will say, if this had been a motion that had been made at budget markup and I had had an opportunity to ask questions and go through that process, I probably would have supported it. At this point, it's not that I think that the proposal of where to move the money is bad. I just want to have a chance to ask the fire chief, do you have capacity to use this extra money? Is it going to go to good use? I want to know that. And, I trust the fire chief. I think he actually has a great program, so I appreciate that. I also have questions about the Midtown Safety Center. I actually represented a neighborhood that this safety center served for 8 years. I'm very familiar with the funding history. This allocation actually makes me a little concerned because it's very high.